Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ways and Means Committee. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Gary, if you wouldn't mind leading.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to start today with Senate Bill 317. We will plan to go into caucus briefly after the session, and we'll exec bills again. We'll be execing several bills today. The plan is to look at the gambling bills. Also, I think Senator Carson's bill might be pretty quick, but there's some quick bills we can get done. We want to get them out so we can get them on the calendar. And with that, we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 317 local, and we will recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Carson.
Committee members of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. My name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Hudson, Londonderry, and Auburn. And I have for your consideration today Senate Bill 317 local, which reduces the interest rate applied to the amount of property taxes abated by a municipality. I had received a letter from the town of Hudson requesting this legislation, and I do have some testimony as to why. And they wrote that in 2018, effective for the 2019 tax year, the general court adjusted the late property tax interest rate that municipalities must charge on late property tax bills, lowering interest rates on delinquent property taxes from 12% to 8% pre-lien and from 18% to 14% post-lien. However, the general court did not in turn lower the amount of interest that municipalities pay out on tax abatements, where it has been at 6% for decades. As the general court lowered the amount of delinquent property tax interest percentages by 50% and 29% respectively in 2018, it would stand to reason that the abatement interest rate percentage should also go down accordingly. This change would benefit property taxpayers in whole by serving to lower the amount of abatement overlay, which is RSA 76:6, that New Hampshire municipalities must raise from property taxation each year. With that, I will end my testimony, and I would ask you to hold questions because there are officials here from the town of Hudson that could answer your questions much better than I could. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carson. Are there any questions from the members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Looks like Natch Grays signed up to speak in favor from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nate Grays for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I did submit written testimony in support of this bill. This is a New Hampshire Municipal Association policy bill, so we do support it. I won't repeat what Senator Carson said, but I will defer to the officials from the towns of Hudson to answer more specific questions that you may have about this bill. I do know that they will bring up the issue of the effective date being for the 2022 tax year, and we would support any sort of clarification for that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for any members of the committee? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Just curious, is this bill only relevant to Hudson, or do other communities also find that it would be helpful?
No, Senator. It is relevant to all communities in the state of New Hampshire because they would all have a overlay for abatements. So this would apply for the interest rate they would have to pay for every community, not just Hudson.
Follow?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you tell us about how much money is at stake here across the state?
I don't know the answer to that question, Senator. It depends on the specific town. because each town will look at what their kind of average abatements are and then adjust that based on the change in interest.
Okay. Thanks.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speaking next is Steve Malicia from Hudson.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Steve Malizia. I'm the town administrator from the town of Hudson. We had asked Senator Carson to sponsor this legislation several years ago.
If you can pull that mic, there
Yeah.
you go, thanks.
Several years ago, we had submitted a floor proposal to NHMA requesting this legislation, and I believe at that conference, at that meeting, they were in favor, and subsequently we asked Senator Carson to forward it. From Hudson's perspective, we have approximately $100,000 to $200,000 worth of tax abatements in a year. So if you're looking at a delta between 6% and 4%, you're talking $2,000 to $4,000 of abatement interest that we wouldn't have to pay out. So from Hudson's perspective, when the legislation changed the lien rates from 12 to 8 and 8 to 14, we just thought it would be equitable to change the abatement rate that we pay out. Hence, that's why we asked for the legislation, and hence that's why we're here today on this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Senator Daniels.
Thank you. As a resident, if I'm late in paying my taxes, I pay 8%. If the government owes me money, why should they not pay me back at 8%?
I don't write the laws, so I'm not sure why there was a delta or differential between that, quite honestly. Sometimes abatements are not because someone's late. Sometimes there's an adjustment to their property record. They may have an incorrect property card where we're abating some taxes, so it's not always a late payment. It could be for other reasons. I'm not sure though why the laws were different, why it was at 6% versus a 12 or an 18% lien, quite honestly. I don't know the genesis of that.
Can you hold the mic closer, please? It's really
Sure.
hard to hear. Your voice is very soft. You're soft-spoken. That's not a bad thing, but
Not a bad thing when you're an administrator. So I'm not sure why there's a differential between, or why the differential exists between what gets paid for an abatement versus what was charged in a lien. That's legislation that's been longstanding. As I stated, not every abatement is for some abatements because of a property tax record, maybe correction, maybe something's incorrect on a card, will abate taxes to someone. So it's not always, a late payment.
Follow-up?
yes, sir.
But wouldn't that also put a responsibility on the community to make sure that property tax cards are correct and that they're actually assessing people correctly so that they don't have to abate?
Of course, it's always a responsibility to do that, certainly, but sometimes folks may do something to their property or may change something and we don't know about it till we maybe go out and do a valuation pickup. Things happen. Conditions change. So, we always strive to be 100% accurate, but it's not always possible.
Okay. And one final question.
Yes.
What is the tax rate currently that towns have to borrow? What is the tax rate currently, of the interest rate that communities pay now if they need to borrow money to make up for late taxes?
I'm assuming you're talking a tax anticipation note, a TAN. I'm not sure what the current interest rate's on. Hudson has never been in a position to have to borrow, so quite frankly, I've never looked into that.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I'm sorry, there's something with the sound system today, so I'm struggling to hear what you said. But I just want to make sure that I wrote this down. You said that Hudson typically abates up to $200,000 per year.
Yes.
And if we lowered this repayment rate by 2%, that would mean a difference in $4,000
2% of
per year
200,000
at
is
the max.
at the max. At the max.
Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair will call Robert Gagney from the City of Manchester Board of Assessors, speaking and in favor. Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. Robert Gagney, Chairman of the Board, City of Manchester, in favor. Just want to request that there be a clarification that this change not only would be effective April 1st of '22, but would be effective for the 2022 property tax year. When the lowering of the interest rate on late taxes was passed, it was effective. The change was made in '18, but it was effective for the 2019 tax year. The reason we want to specify that is Manchester has already processed abatements for 2021 using 6%. If this change goes in effect for April 1st of '22 without clarifying that it's only for taxes that haven't been billed yet, we would have to use 4% for refunds for last year, which would be unfair to those people compared to the ones who have already been processed. I would point out that I'm hoping that whoever did the math on how much the interest rate charged was lowered as a percentage wasn't an assessor. The interest pre-lien actually was reduced 33%, and the interest post-lien was reduced 22% back in '18, not 50% and 29%. Somebody did the math backwards there, so. And I believe you've received a couple letters that I've seen copies of that quote those percentages. So it's 33% and 22%. This would be a 33%, 1/3 reduction, which would be appropriate, I believe. The question about how much, what the dollar amount we would refund would be is really, it's tough to figure out. It varies every year because it depends on how quickly you process those refunds. As I indicated, I've already processed some 2021 refunds, so it's going to be, 20 days, 10 days worth of interest at 6% per year. So it's not a big dollar amount. Some of these abatements may take a couple of years to clear. If we deny and they go to appeal, they go to BTLA or Superior Court, it could be 24 months before they're refunded. So that would be a more significant amount. So that's my testimony, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, state the change that you wanted in this legislation.
Sure.
You said there's something wrong with the date, so give me those so that I have
I
it
believe
clearly.
that the change would be where it says effective date, last
Yes.
line. This tax shall take effect April 1st, 2022 for the 2022 property tax year and forward. I think that would take care of that
Okay.
question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Would that make it retroactive?
No, it would not, because we haven't billed 2022 taxes yet.
Okay.
That was the other question. Can you make it
You cannot,
retroactive?
right.
So I think it would just make it cleaner.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
And not speaking, but in favor, Jim Michaud from Hudson, and remote testifying on 317. Senator French supporting, Jim Comerford, a member of the public, supporting, Cindy Kudlick, an elected official, supporting, and Jean Bodwin, a member of the public, supporting. Is there anyone who wants to testify further on this bill that either hasn't or has already testified once? And if not, we'll close that hearing on Senate Bill 317. All right. Perfect timing. So we're going to open the hearing at this time on Senate Bill 312 relative to adjusted assessments of taxable property. And we recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Jim Gray. Welcome, Jim.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Senator Jim Gray. I represent District 6. which starts in Rochester, goes up Route 11. And lo and behold, did I know that when I got assigned to the Assessing Standards Board, they were going to provide me with adequate work to keep me busy. This bill is at the request of the Assessing Standards Board, and they will speak much more eloquently about it than I. Right now, if you are looking at the bill, page 1, line 3, it adds just a few words there. The job of the assessor is to make sure that the assessments are equal, but when an error is identified that would benefit the town or city, they, right now, per statute, are unable to make that right. And I'm sure that they will speak more about it than I. This is a fairness issue. It's an issue that has been a problem with the assessors, and I will take any questions, but the real knowledgeable people are behind me.
Thank you, Senator Gray. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thanks very much.
You.
All right, do we have the sign, I need the sign-up list. Sonia, the sign-up list, do I have it? I've got it here, we go, I'm sorry. All right, so next to testify, speaking in favor, Robert Gagney from Manchester Board of Assessors.
Good morning, thank you. Long time no see. So the impetus to make this change was a recent Supreme Court order in a case of Merrimack Premium Malls versus Merrimack. And when initially I heard about and read this Supreme Court decision, I was kind of shocked that when you discover an error in an appraisal that you couldn't make a correction. But in rereading the decision a couple of times and looking at the statute, it became clear that their decision was correct based on the language in the law. Did a little bit of research, and a previous version of 75-8 specifically allowed for the correction of errors. That language was in there, and it didn't make it to the latest, newest version of 75-8. And I would point out that in 75-8, it requires that all assessments are reasonably proportional within the municipality, but you can't do that if you can't correct errors. So there's an inconsistency in this statute the way it is written currently. And I'll give you an example of an impact. About the time I read this decision, I was qualifying sales in the city of Manchester and came across a sale of a triple-decker on our west side, and something didn't seem right with the listing in MLS versus our property card. Did a little bit of research, and I found out that we had the building measured 20 feet short. Really couldn't figure out when that happened, but this building that was, actually 46 or so feet deep was only measured as 26 feet deep. So you can imagine the assessment on that property was significantly lower than it should have been. I did verify with some of our old records. We keep records going right back to the late 60s that we had it measured wrong, and I fixed it. My reading of the Supreme Court decision would have said, I can't fix that until the next revaluation 4 or 5 years down the road. And how is that fair to the other property taxpayers that one property is valued significantly lower than it should be? So I feel this is a very important correction in 75-8, not carrying forward what was in an earlier version. I would also indicate that I'm a member of the Assessing Standards Board. Senator Gray did indicate that we asked for this change. We had a discussion about this at our meeting of December 10th. And there was a first and a second for us to come here, and I'm the vice chair. The chair is also here, and she'll speak to it as well. So both as the chairman of the Board of Assessors in the city of Manchester and as a member of the Assessing Standards Board, I would urge you to make this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gagney. Any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Jim Michaud, He's not speaking, but he's in favor. We have Catherine Heck from the Municipal Association speaking in favor. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Gaida and members of the committee. My name is Catherine Heck. I am with the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Can you pull that mic close?
I'm sorry, sir.
We got
Sure.
the air filters in the back and they throw a lot of noise out. So, and of course, yeah, pull it right up close and so that we can hear it loud and clear. Thank you.
I am here to speak in favor of the bill. We are in support of SB 312 and the recent decision for Merrimack Premium Outlets in the town of Merrimack. The ruling of this case allows some property taxpayers to benefit from a clear error in assessment, and that leaves additional undue tax burden on the rest of the municipality. This bill just seeks to correct language that was previously in RSA and was somehow omitted.
Would you suspend for just a second? Senator Rosenwald, did you turn off your mic?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to repeat any testimony, and I think there's clearly other people behind me, but we wanted to be sure that this error can be corrected in the RSA. So moving forward, the language allows for remedies to be made to the proportionally, to municipal taxation, so everyone is taxed proportionally and no one bears any undue burden from an unfair assessment.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming today. Can you just tell me, do these corrections, would they go both ways, either increase or decrease the taxation for the property owner?
I am not an expert in this area. I'm not an assessor. I believe someone behind me could most likely answer that. I do believe it is the selectmen's authority and obligation to make sure all annual adjustments are accurate.
Thank you.
Further questions, members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today.
Betsy Patton, Representative, Honorable, welcome. It's good to see you again.
The old stomping grounds, right?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you.
Betsy, can you pull that mic close again?
Okay, for the record, my name is Betsy Patton, and I am the chairman of the Assessing Standards Board. Some of you have served on it. Thank you very much for your service. And as Senator Gray said, we did have an issue when we got when we read the Supreme Court decision in October, that they put out the opinion in October of 21. And what happened is, as my Vice Chair Bob Gagnon has said, is that there was language changes, and what happened is always unintended consequences. It was dropped, and the ability to correct any appraisals was dropped from 75.8. And every selectman has to take an oath to say that their taxable property was appraised to the best of our knowledge and belief at full value. And so in order to have the correction made as it is in line 3, to correct any errors in existing appraisals, we'll make it so that that oath that they have to take is true and faithful. And also what happens is that, as Mr. Gagnon said, if we do not add this change, then the error can go through for as long as 5 years, which makes it not proportional and fair to the rest of the taxpayers. So I'm hoping that you will be able to do this as ought to pass, and it will correct a glitch that we didn't know we did. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I hope I can answer them.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll ask you the same question. Are these errors, they could go in either way for the property tax owner?
Yes,
is that correct?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Great to see you again. Just a question about the effective date, the 60 days after passage. Is that problematic, or is that the right date?
No, because that will be, let me just ask my vice chair. 60 days, okay, Bob?
Yeah, so So it probably should be like the other, April 1st of '22.
April 1st of '22. Yes, thank you. It probably should be April 1st of 2022.
It's possible it might not be through the process yet.
Yes, and also I don't know if there's been an appeal to the Supreme Court yet,
Okay.
issue. So, yes, we need to have an amendment for that.
All right, we'll keep that under advisement, but again, this bill may not be on the governor's desk by April 1st.
By April 1st, and
So
that's
that's a
true.
consideration. I think that maybe the 60 days might be, or 30 days or something, but
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe 30 days after passage would be better. Okay.
further questions? Senator D.
Thank you. Thank you. Betsy, welcome. Welcome. Great to see you again. And,
It's
thank
good to see you,
for
Senator.
For your great work. And I just wanted to re-emphasize Senator Hennessy's question. This works both ways.
Yes, it does, absolutely.
People should be assured of that. It isn't just a one-way street.
Yeah.
It's both ways.
Yes, we have to do that on all of our assessing. It's either up or down.
Agreed. And thank you for your service, Betsy. You're a remarkable woman who's done great work for the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Certainly appreciate it and appreciated the opportunity to serve with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I would add my plaudits. I also would ask a question, and that is, it says annually, and in accordance with the state assessing guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So would this adjustment be made once a year, or would it be made as these things are being discovered?
Oh, Robert, I need you again. I am not an assessor. I don't know the process. Robert, Mr. Gagnon is
Sure.
very knowledgeable and my vice chair.
So the inventory we take is effective April 1st of the tax year.
Right.
We work throughout the whole tax year, but we try to take that we must take that snapshot as of April 1st. So, for example, if a new house is constructed in May, it's vacant land for that tax year, for the whole tax year. So that snapshot is as of April 1st, a correction. So if we find an error or a change in a property that occurred after April 1st, we're not going to make that change for that year. But if it existed April 1st, we should and must make that change.
So my understanding from what you said is that if I built my house after April 1st, it was vacant land, that change to the assessed value would not happen until the following April, when the inventories are done.
Yes, correct.
So this is inventory-based?
Yes.
As far as the dates?
It is.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, the RSA 75-8 already allows us to pick up that change of the new house construction.
Right.
So if it's a change from April 1st to April 1st, we can pick that up, and it allows that. What is not allowed is if it's an error, if the property didn't change between April 1st and April 1st, in other words, like my example of carrying that 20-foot error on that three-family, you can't correct that until the next reval. Now, luckily in my case, we did a revaluation this year, so that correction wouldn't have had an impact, or it wouldn't have been, the Supreme Court decision wouldn't have applied to it. But if it had been next year, I would have been stuck with that correction, making that correction 4 years from now. So it is inventory date, yes.
Okay, and so, for example, the house that is built would have a building permit, and that would probably trigger I would call it a spot reval on that particular property from the assessor?
Did you say without a permit?
No, with
With
the
a
building
permit, yes.
permit, right? You're gonna
So-
build with a permit, so.
Yes, so we track permits, and that's a reason we would go out and see if there's a change.
And that could change anytime from April 1 of this year till,
Right, but it would be whatever's there April 1st. So if there's a building permit and it's 50% complete April 1st, even if we're only out there in June and it's complete, you know, we're going to look at, in Manchester's case, we have access to all of the building department's inspections so that we can tell what was there April 1st. You know, was it framed with insulation? Was it drywalled? And then we can compute what the percentage complete was. But again, that is a change that's allowed under the current version of 75-8.
all right, thank you very much.
Okay.
This is a new process, right?
Yes.
And Senator Gray here? Shows him speaking, but neither in favor nor opposed. I would suspect he's probably in favor, but he's also not here. Is there anyone else in the room who has not testified on Senate Bill 312 who would like to speak or to speak a second time? All right, hearing none, the Senate remote testify list only has one person, it's Senator Birdsall, and she signed in support, representing Senate District 19. And that will end the hearing on Senate Bill 312. Signature. Speaking. Take your time. All right, we will, at 9:33, we will start the hearing on Senate Bill 338, enabling municipalities to adopt a municipal occupancy fee. And we will recognize Senator Prentice as the prime sponsor. Welcome.
Microphone is on. Good morning, Senator Guida, members of the committee. It's nice to be here on this cool winter morning. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Sue Prentice, and I'm the state senator from District 5, the great Connecticut River Valley. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 338. And as many of you know, the city of Lebanon is my hometown, my home city. And it's long served as a regional hub for healthcare, employment, and recreation. I'm proud to see how our city has grown. And it was featured this week in the Valley News as the biotech hub in New Hampshire. As a micropolitan hub, the city of Lebanon invests dollars and time into services and infrastructure necessary to provide a safe environment for all who come to work, to stay, and to recreate. Our 13,623 residents host over somewhere between 25 and 30,000 visitors to our city on a daily basis, typically during the work week primarily. So our population, it at least doubles, and sometimes it's higher than that. We're not completely sure at that number. And we're happy to have these folks again here working and recreating and visiting our city. But with this comes, increased responsibility and need for services and the cost of readiness for our city services. This places pressure on local property taxpayers who absorb the costs of this welcomed yet temporary, somewhat transient population coming and going for these purposes I've already stated. Senate Bill 338 is enabling legislation that would allow New Hampshire municipalities, by the vote of a governing body, to assess a $2 per 24-hour fee. So if a hotel room is occupied for 24 hours, it would be a $2 fee for that 24-hour stay added to that hotel room bill. This is not an unusual practice and is used in a number of other states in the nation and a number of other cities and towns and municipalities. These funds would be directed to designated funds in order to offset the burden felt by local taxpayers while maintaining these services and environment that both the population need and benefit from. As a former city councilor, a former mayor, and I'm also a taxpayer of the city of Lebanon, I've come to understand the pressure on my fellow property taxpayers and the impact created by our status as a hub. And we have long sought a remedy to this. Lebanon is not alone in this conversation. I'm not sure what other communities will be here to talk today. I know I have a representative from the city of Lebanon, but I did speak with Portsmouth last night, and although they may not have someone here today, they will be following up with the committee in writing. So in closing, I believe that 338 will assist local communities to defer costs and develop a non-tax revenue stream to aid in the work of these municipalities. I ask your support in this effort to lessen the impacts experienced by our property taxpayers and supporting a thriving hub. And I ask you, again, to support this solution, this remedy, and pass Senate Bill 338. So that's where I start. Thank you, Senator Gaeta.
Thank you, Senator Prentice. Are there any questions for Senator Prentice?
Thank you,
Senator
Chairman. Thank you, Senator Prentice, for being here. One question for you. It says per 24-hour period. So when I check into a hotel room, they don't usually let me check in until 4, and then I have to be out by 11 or 12. Do you think this language would cover a one-night stay? Even though it's not a full 24 hours?
It's not a full 24-hour period, yeah. It should cover it by stay. It was written for 24 hours, and we could potentially modify that, but
Okay.
it's supposed to be for each night that there's a stay, and it goes up to 184 days, so you can't pass that threshold before
Okay.
it becomes a different conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Daniels.
Thank you. The capital reserve that's being created, could that be used to buy another ambulance?
So it could be used to buy an ambulance to support the operations of public works. It could be used for law enforcement. These are the services that are routinely called upon, especially during the daytime for this, again, this population that is welcomed in our city. So the answer to your question is it could buy, a fire truck. It could buy an ambulance. It's going to help us in our state of readiness. So the taxpayers would have some relief in the purchase of that. They wouldn't have to do it all themselves.
Follow up?
Please.
Rather than putting a tax on one particular, just put that in the budget.
So Senator Daniels, I don't consider this a tax. I consider it a fee, and it's enabling legislation. Not every community has to do this. You already know that. But this is, we, as the city has grown, we have more and more hotels, and they require services. So these are people that are coming, and they're temporary, but they're coming and they're using those services. And it seemed, based on my research back when I was a city councilor and a mayor, that this was a way that other states and municipalities in our country remedied this problem and brought some relief. It has not been unusual for me in my past travels to visit capital cities in particular and hub cities and have a fee, some of them use them as recreation and tourism fees, tacked onto my bill that was small, and I was happy to pay it to support that community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Hearing none, thanks very much.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Mayor Giglin Eachern from Portsmouth. He's speaking. I'm going to guess in favor, but you didn't mark it down.
Oh, I meant to. Yes, in favor.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Gaeta, members of the committee. I'd say the best part about being mayor of Portsmouth is that when people can't pronounce my name, they just call me mayor. Saves a lot of time. But
how bad did I do?
Mayor Daigle McCackern, representing the city of Portsmouth. And it's a pleasure to be here speaking to you today on this bill. I submitted testimony. I'm not going to read that, but I just wanted to avail myself to questions and give you two scenarios. One, for the state of New Hampshire, when Portsmouth builds a hotel. We draw people up from Boston. They come spend money in the city of Portsmouth, the surrounding regions. There's a lot to do in Portsmouth, but there's also a lot to do in the rest of our great state. They continue up, they come to the lakes, they come over to Manchester, they come to Concord. We are a gateway into our great state, and we draw a lot of people up there. I think it is an economic boom for New Hampshire to have Portsmouth continue to draw people in. In order to do so, we need to build hotels to serve that purpose and that end. And there's some things that come along with that. So there's I think Rockingham County, it's about 32%. The last time I checked, it was about Portsmouth sending about $30 million to the state of New Hampshire. And this is not for Portsmouth to come and squabble about where how much we send and if it's equitable or not. I think every city in New Hampshire, we are a collective, we're a subdivision. We have to support the state, and we do it in our way. Is there a question, Senator?
Yeah, are you done with your testimony?
No, I just,
All right, we'll get the questions at the end.
okay.
Yeah.
One more point. So I believe that, but there's another scenario I just want to walk through, and that's to the taxpayer in the city of Portsmouth when we build a hotel. First, there's a lot of consternation around building a hotel because the residents know that a hotel, while it doesn't have school-aged children that are staying in it, requires a lot of services. I think Senator Daniel has previously asked, is it going to pay for an ambulance? We're not looking to pay for an ambulances, but when we have a 5-story hotel in the city of Portsmouth, we need a different kind of ladder truck to support that. When we go from 20,000, 23,000 people living in our city in a day like today when there's not a whole lot of tourism, there's some hardy souls in Portsmouth that are coming up eating oysters, but day like today, most people are staying home, but in the summertime, that swells to about 60,000, 65,000. That requires more, has to go back to our taxpayer and ask to support these services that are supporting the state of New Hampshire as well in terms of tourism. And the real kicker here is that as we become more popular through tourism, a lot of people want to come and stay and live in Portsmouth. That drives up property values in our city. And because how we assess property values through similar home sales, that forces more people's valuations to increase and to rise, and we're not able to then ask them to say, we're trying to keep the budget as flat as we can. We tried to keep it as flat as we could through COVID. We're still requiring more out of them to pay for hotels that they are not seeing a direct benefit from because they're not seeing any money coming directly out of them, even though the tourism is supporting our state. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think it's well past fair to be allowed individual cities and towns in New Hampshire to make this decision for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any question from members of the committee? Senator Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mayor, thanks for coming. Your father was my seatmate here in the legislature 100 years ago. And the great Paul McGuire should be remembered for his great service to the state of New Hampshire. And your uncle was my fraternity brother.
Yeah, he was better at basketball.
We're close, we're close. So the question is this. Looking at the number of properties that have been constructed in the city of Portsmouth, I'm talking about the hotels that have been constructed, is there any estimate on what a fee like this would produce for the city of Portsmouth in terms of revenue that could be set aside for specific purposes?
I'm happy to come back with that information to the committee. I don't have that offhand. I know that we've done the homework, but I'm not the arithmetic guy on that.
Further question, Mr. Chair?
Follow up.
You have been building at quite a rate. Comment for me on the number of new hotel rooms that are now available in the city of Portsmouth.
In the last year, the AC, there's hundreds that have come online. And again, there's many in the city that would that question that. I believe in property rights and being able to do. That's a tenet of our country. But we've had, at least in the last, I think it's the AC, there's 2 more planned, ones that haven't started construction. But it's fair to say there's hundreds of more rooms, even since I joined the council 2 years ago now, Mayor.
And further question?
Follow up.
And Portsmouth has had to expend some dollars to accommodate these buildings. So the fee would be sort of a return on investment, would it not?
Yes, I like this bill. I want to see us to be able to continue to invest and to align our shared goals of a prosperous city and a prosperous state. It's harder to do that in Portsmouth when people question a hotel, because don't we have enough, they're not, they're not paying their fair share. I don't want to get into all that, but what we could do with this is provide more investment into our city that would allow hotels themselves to flourish, but also our community to be, we have to invest a lot in tourism, and we do that. We're not going to stop investing in tourism, but at a certain point, we get to a point with the taxpayer that we have a Sophie's choice. Are we going to continue to grow, or are we going to stop making the investments that are needed in our city in order to attract these residents to support our community and support our businesses, support the state? But by doing so means that the taxpayer is living on a fixed income, that retired on a Navy Yard pension is deciding whether or not they have to move out of their home and leave Portsmouth because there's nowhere else for them to go within our city limits.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for the kind words. My father, I'm sure that he would be pleased knowing his name was mentioned here in this chamber.
Well, he was truly an outstanding legislator and a wonderful human being and a great friend, so you're very welcome.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Both my children live in Portsmouth, so I'm there a lot.
New
And
grandbaby.
I've noticed that there are a couple new hotels that have opened in the last year or two. Do you know offhand how much additional property tax has been generated by those hotels?
So I can follow up with that, but with that information. But it raises a good point in terms of commercial versus residential. Portsmouth, we have gotten that balance. I think better than many communities in terms of the commercial, but we're not able. We don't have revenue numbers on because they're not required to be reported. In terms of actually understanding, what we could fairly actually price on that. And folks, come up to me all the time and say, well, now, Mayor, we need to really raise commercial property valuations. We need to get them to pay their fair share. And while I agree with that sentiment, the fair share would mean that all of these commercial properties, well, ultimately the highest grossing aspect of all of these is a hotel, because that's the easiest use of land and the most impactful. But if we were to actually raise commercial values, it would push all of the other small businesses out of our community that are currently in the downtown, and I think what make us special. So while they do certainly add to the commercial value, if they were to add to their true worth, I think it would be more, but that would also make it so that every business would be viewed in the light of, well, this commercial space could be a hotel in the future, and raise those taxes on other businesses within the city limits, something that we're not looking to drive small businesses out by raising commercial values to that extent.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And either to add on to Senator Rosenwald's question or maybe to repeat it, I think what we're looking for is the differential from what that former parking lot or rail yard was taxation-wise to the town of or city of Portsmouth to now what it is taxation-wise as a large hotel. What is the increase in value to the taxpayers of Portsmouth?
Yep, and that's a good question. I think, and I appreciate that question. I think the only way we get through, make progress is getting down to the details. That seems like a detail-oriented question. If you will afford me the opportunity, I'm going to respond to the committee with an answer to that question, working with our legal department, also our assessor's office. Is that acceptable? Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and it's appreciated the work you do on behalf of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speak will be Heidi Milbrand from the New Hampshire Bed and Breakfast Association. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good to see you, Heidi.
Always good to be seen.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave. I have a hearing on a prime bill of mine, so I'm going to turn the chair over to Senator Daniels, along with the lists. I wish I could stay.
That's okay, you know how to reach me.
I do. Thank you.
Hey, good morning.
Well, good morning and thank you. My name's Heidi Milbrand and I own and operate Pleasant View Bed and Breakfast in Bristol. And as a little sidebar, a little shameless self-promotion, we just opened a 24-seat brew pub on site as well. I'm the president of the New Hampshire Bed and Breakfast Association, and I have about 40 members in that association, and I sit on the board of directors of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. So here we go again. My business sits in the beautiful Newfound Lake region, and we rely heavily on tourists. Legitimate lodging establishments collect 8.5% meals and rooms tax. Adding another fee to my guests will deter them from staying and reduce my business. When I travel, nothing frustrates me more than seeing my bill from a lodging facility that includes a city tax, an occupancy tax, a state tax, and an airport tax if I happen to stay near one. Legitimate lodging businesses are already undermined by Airbnb and other online booking companies who already work outside state regulations. Will towns be required or able to collect the $2 per room per night from these online bookings? According to their statistics, they rent a lot of rooms. I'm also aware that HB 1204 proposed to reduce the meals and rentals tax. Why would you reduce that and then assess this tax rather than leave the M&R as it is and redirect some of those funds for this purpose? Doing things as you are proposing adds much more admin costs and adds confusion for legitimate lodging owners and their guests. Bristol has 2 legitimate bed and breakfasts. There are no other legitimate lodging options. We're very transparent in our operations. And because of companies like Airbnb not having to compete on a level playing field, legitimate bed and breakfasts are losing business. I can't see how 2 legitimate lodging operations in Bristol are going to make enough to fund our town's ability to market tourism, if that's what this bill is intended for. From a town's point of view, there's no enforcement provisions, further showing how little thought has gone into this bill. And what about administrative costs to the town and business owners? How will they be paid? Are these funds targeted for a specific purpose, or will they just go into the town's general fund? I also see that in order for this bill's requirement to go into effect, towns will need to vote on it. I shudder at that thought. I know how people in my town think, and they will view this as a property tax reduction, and it will get voted in without regard to its long-term consequences, when in fact it puts an additional burden on me, the town, and my fellow legitimate lodging partners to collect and remit yet another tax and/or fee. I urge you to truly think about what you're requesting us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Heidi.
Wow, thank you.
Get off easy. Chair will recognize Karen Liot Hill from the City of Lebanon. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Karen Leo Hill. I am a city councilor and former mayor in the City of Lebanon. I also bring regrets from Councilor Cliff Below, one of your former colleagues who wanted to be here today but is at the PUC at a hearing right now. He will also be following up with the committee with his personal testimony to this matter. We are here today in support of SB 338. In fact, we have asked our legislative delegation for many years to continue pressing forward this legislation, even though it has been defeated on other occasions. But we are here again because it is still an important issue. This bill will allow municipalities to offset the cost of services related to tourism and to people who are visiting our community during the day. It is enabling legislation that will allow the communities who choose to implement it to collect this fee up to $2 per night. There are several municipalities that are disparately impacted by tourism and other travel into the state. And I thought that Mayor Mcguire spoke eloquently about the situation in Portsmouth. I'd like to share with you a little bit about the situation in Lebanon. We are a smaller community in Grafton County, the beautiful Grafton County. And we are very fortunate to be the capital center, the regional hub for a large part of northern New England. It crosses both sides of the Connecticut River with New Hampshire and Vermont. And we have been recently acknowledged as becoming a real hub of technology and innovation. We are, of course, also home to Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which also provide tremendous benefits and also do have an impact on our local services. We do also hear from people in our community who are being taxed out of their homes. Property taxes now comprise a huge portion of people's housing costs. And in Lebanon, we have retired folks, just like everywhere else, on fixed incomes who are not able to continue keeping up with the costs. And so we know the need for property tax relief is real. In Lebanon, our population is much larger during the day. So we have to have a police department and a fire department and emergency medical services the size that can handle our daytime population. Our roads are much more heavily traveled. Our infrastructure, our water and sewer is much more used than a community typically our size. And that is because during the day we have such a larger population who is there. And we are very happy to have them there. Let me be clear. We are very happy to be this hub of activity, energy, of economic development and growth for this larger region. But it does have costs. And right now, it's our property taxpayers in Lebanon who are carrying that very heavy burden. All we are asking, what this bill will do, is to ask some of the people who are there during the day for work, for business, for tourism, to pay a portion of the cost. We're just asking everyone to pay their fair share. And honestly, if you have spent a night in a hotel in a nice place like the Upper Valley, adding another $2 to your bill is not going to be, I just don't think it's too much to ask. This cost is going to be put on to the users. The users are typically in Lebanon because we're a little different from Portsmouth, where every city has its own particular individuality, and ours is we have people there typically during the week because they're there associated with business. So it's probably the businesses that are actually going to end up paying that $2 that gets passed on. Now, I will admit, this is a very different experience than the community of Bristol. Bristol sounds like they have 2 lodging opportunities, and I'm sure that they are wonderful. I doubt that the town of Bristol would choose to implement this type of a fee on patrons of these 2 lodging areas. But in the city of Lebanon, it would have a huge impact, a huge benefit to our local taxpayers, whereas in Bristol, it wouldn't have much of an impact, and so it's unlikely that that community would vote at a town meeting to actually implement it. That is one of the real strengths of this bill, is that it is enabling legislation for local option. Only the communities where the people of that community deem that this would be good for that community will actually move it forward. And so it is something that provides a significant benefit with really very little downside. If people don't think it's good for them, they don't have to adopt it. Whereas in Lebanon and Portsmouth, and probably a handful of other communities, it would actually be a very meaningful source of property tax relief. So for those reasons, we ask that you would recommend passage of this bill to the full Senate with an ought to pass. On behalf of the City of Lebanon, thank you very much.
Thank you. Question, Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Good to see you again. I have a question for you. This bill takes effect upon passage. Do you have any idea how Lebanon would go about, if the citizens pass the $2 fee, will go about collecting this $2 a night fee?
That is a question that has come up before. I'm sorry that I don't have the answer right now. I know that our city manager, Sean Mulholland, has prepared information about that, so I'm happy to share that with the committee if I'm able to do so.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no others that are signed up to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak that has not? Yes.
Good morning again. My name is Catherine Hack. I'm with the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. The distinguished speakers before me have illustrated the great benefits that this
Again,
local...
I'm going to ask you to get right up on that microphone because
I'm so sorry, sir. The distinguished speakers who have spoken previous to me have illustrated the benefits of this local option fee. The New Hampshire Municipal Association supports this legislation as it does allow for the municipality to decide for itself if this is a good option, taking into account perhaps the increased demands on municipal services that some municipalities experience due to the increase in tourism. Well, we did hear from some of the larger communities, some of the smaller communities with volunteer fire departments, or maybe one part-time police chief also experience these increases in services, or perhaps it is an overuse of a municipal facility like recreation, a beach, a lake, or a conservation path. So we would just ask that this legislation be considered ought to pass, as it would allow that local option with the municipality to decide if this fee is good for its own community. Thank you.
thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak that has not spoken? Okay, with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 338. And we'll state that the following people have remotely testified in support. Senator Rebecca Perkins Quokka, Senator David Waters, Margaret Bowles, Ed Morris, Mr. McKetchin has already testified, Cam Bradshaw, Susan Kaplan, Barbara Harai, and Russin Chester is opposed, as is Greg Moore of Americans for Prosperity, Curtis Howland, Sarah Reed, Patricia Anastasia. I believe that covers it. And Sonia, when you're ready, we'll go on to the next one. What's that? I don't have the list.
Thank you.
We will open the hearing on Senate Bill 315 and call upon the sponsor, Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. Pleasure to be here. And for the record, I'm Senator Lou D'Alessandro. I represent District 20. Manchester Wards 3, 4, 10, 11, and the town of Goffstown. And I come before you as the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 315. One of the constant themes that we hear at these hearings is property taxes. And the fact that property taxes are high, people are suffering to pay their property taxes. And we're looking for ways, in some ways, to support bills and programs that help defray or help reduce property taxes. This piece of legislation that I bring before you directs that a portion of the new rooms and meals revenue, which should amount to about $30 million, be used to defray property taxes or to deal with property taxes. About $100 million is going back to the communities now. With the change that was made in the law, an additional $30 million will go back to the communities. This bill says that from 0 to 60% shall be used to reduce local property taxes. Every bill that we have heard this morning has an effect on property taxes. Every piece of legislation we heard, either a correction in the assessment caused by a Supreme Court decision, a fee added to a hotel room that would in essence help communities deal with property taxes. The focus of this legislature, generally biennium after biennium, is how do we deal with property taxes, and how do we deal with the fact that property taxes are so high that many people cannot afford them. This piece of legislation deals with that. Currently, about 50% of the communities use a portion of their rooms and meals to help with property taxes. About 50%. Well, that means 50% don't. This mandates that and again, a local option between 0 and 60% of the money that's being sent in addition. And that will change on a year-to-year basis based on the amount of money that's collected at the local level from the rooms and meals tax. But this gives an opportunity for communities to deal with property taxes and to deal with the fact that property taxes are high and that many people cannot afford them. I've been here for a long time. Property taxes have been part and parcel of the discussion since I came. And I might say, Senator Daniels, I came 50 years ago. You were probably a child at that time.
Close.
Young. So I came in my youth, and we talked about property taxes. I'm still here today, and we're still talking about property taxes. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you so much for your attention, and we'll address any queries that might come up.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Good to see you. Question.
Yes.
Don't towns already do this? So like a town or a city, has all of their expenses that they're going to budget it, or capital improvements, and then they have all of their revenues, and all of the meals and rooms taxes that we send back are their revenues, and those are already offset against their expenses, which equals the total property taxes for a town. So 0 to 60% or 100% are already doing this. They're reducing the tax burden on local people because it's reducing the total expense that the taxpayers have to pay for. And I think that's why we sent back the 30% meals and room taxes last year, knowing that it would reduce the whole tax burden, unless a town decides to go crazy in their spending. So we already do this. I think what you really are wishing to do by what you said was to limit the increase in spending. And
first of all, thanks for your comments. Appreciate them very much. Any municipality can limit its spending. That just takes action by the governing body. and we have default budgets that come into play all the time as a result of that. What I'm asking here is this is additional money. This is unaccounted for money. It's additional money because we raised the amount that's going back. This would mean an additional 30 million, but I say that would change every year based on the amount of rooms and meals revenue that's collected across the board. But this portion of it shall be used to abate property taxes. So at the local option, they have to accept it, but they'd have the money to do it, and it would be in excess of the money that they have been receiving, because it will be an additional. It's additional based on the most recent legislation. But you're absolutely right, Senator. The municipality, the town, has, through its governing body, the ability to build its budget and to reduce its budget, based on the testimony that comes before in the local communities. I go to the budget hearings every year in the town that I represent, and they have a budget committee, and they debate the budget, and they either go for the requests of the entities in the town, or they deny them. This gives an opportunity for excess revenue to be used to address the one complaint that's most consistent: property taxes. If there has been one complaint that I have heard in this legislature in the last 50 years, it's property tax. And how do we address property tax? This is a way to address property tax, and it gives a municipality an opportunity to do that.
Further questions from the committee? I have one question. Who decides when you've got up to 60%? Who decides the percentage? Because I would read that up to 60% is that someone could choose to have zero.
Thank you for the question, and you're absolutely right. Some communities would refuse to do it. I accept that, but it shall be used. That's the key. It shall be used for property taxes, and then there's an option whether you want to do that or not. And as I said, Senator, and I think you're a town person, you've been involved in town government for a long time. I would ask you, how many times have you heard that property taxes are too high? And you've been a dedicated public local official for a long period of time. I know that I served on my local school board for 10 years. I've been involved in local government. That's the one thing that I hear constantly. Property taxes are too high. Can't you do something to affect property taxes? But you're absolutely right. And I think giving people an option is very important. What do they consider the most effective way to spend the money?
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Turn this back to the chair.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. Catherine Heck from New Hampshire Municipal Association. And speaking, but not favor or opposed?
Let me get right in the microphone. I apologize. We wanted to hear the intent of the legislation before we took a firm position, as I do appreciate Senator D'Alessandro wanting to reduce the local property tax, and Meals and Rooms already does exactly that. So as written, being that it's an up to an amount that seems very arbitrary based on municipalities, they already have the ability to reduce taxation. We would respectfully oppose the legislation because it has always been an unrestricted revenue form for municipalities. And with that, any dollar that's a revenue always works toward reducing the municipal tax rate. So whether it's paying for fire services, a new police cruiser, or they're actually placing the money and committing it on the DRA form to reduce taxes. Any additional revenue already does that. And the legislation passed by this body and the House last legislative session with meals and rooms tax has made a tremendous difference already in reducing the local tax rate with that increase that we saw. So I guess our position is that we're not fully understanding the intent of the legislation or how it would work in practice. Because any revenue always reduces the local tax rate that wasn't raised locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions for Senator Daniels?
Thank you. On the last bill, you testified in favor of that bill because it was local control. Why would not NHMA just oppose this? Because this is the state telling the locals what they have to do as opposed to allowing local control.
Well, as I said, we do oppose the legislation. We did want to make sure we understood the intent of it, and if we were properly reading the bill with that up to language, that was, that we wanted to understand Senator D'Alessandro's position on that to make sure we understood. But we are always in favor of local control, and we would like to see the revenue remain unrestricted and under local control.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Dan Mcguire, Honorable Dan Mcguire. Welcome, Dan. And you're signed up as speaking, but I'm not sure in favor or opposed.
Yeah, I'm going to say changes may be required. So, as is not good, with changes possible, okay? So, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Dan Mcguire. I'm from Epsom. I'm here today on behalf of Granite State Taxpayers. I'm the secretary of that organization and the longest-serving board member. So, this is a terrific bill, maybe for Washington, D.C., but not for Concord. It has a great title, but it has absolutely zero effect as written. Senator Hennessy and Senator Daniels anticipated what I have to say, which is 0 is up to 60, right? So a town could choose to do something, not do something, it has zero effect. Even if you were to change up to at least, it would still have zero effect because of what Senator Hennessy pointed out, which is that property taxes are the result of an extremely simple formula. A budget is created, the budget has a certain amount of spending, you subtract from that spending all revenue other than property tax, and the result is what property tax is. So any money sent to towns for rooms and meals tax or any other reason is already 100% reducing property tax, because if you didn't send it, property tax would go up. And the amount, if you sent $1, property tax is less than by $1, right? It's a simple equation. So if you want to reduce property tax from the point of view of the property taxpayer, you have to control spending, exactly as Senator Hennessy said. So you would have to change this bill to something akin to a spending cap, and you would have to say that spending this year is less by this amount than spending was last year, right? Because that would actually reduce property tax by that amount. And often, and such language exists because there's some cities and towns which have spending caps. And they usually have various exceptions. When you have contract changes or things like that, there are some exceptions that are put into the formula. So such a thing could be done. But I think it's unlikely that the legislature would want to go there by imposing a spending cap on all municipalities, right? And that's why, just in general, if you want to lower property taxes, we're very much in favor of what happened in the last budget, when the statewide property tax was reduced, because that goes directly to bills, right? So the state charged a certain amount of property tax. It lowered that amount. Therefore, we've reduced property, the state has reduced property taxes. And that's the way to do it until such amount gets to zero, and then you have to work on it in other ways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Mr. Mcguire? Hearing none?
All right.
Thank you very much. So did we have any remote testimony? Oh, here it is. My bad. Oh, here it is. So we had signed in Senator Perkins Quokka supporting the bill, Senator Waters supporting the bill, Bridget Codling opposing the bill, Town Administrator of Haverhill, Town Manager, I should say, support, Sarah Reed, Julia Griffin opposing from the Town of Hanover, Patricia Anastasia supporting, Ed Morris from the Town of Enfield opposing the bill, Cam Bradshaw opposing the bill as a member of the public, Wilfred Mott Smith as a member of the public supporting the bill, and Rosanne Chester supporting the bill. Has anyone not spoken the first time or spoken and wishes to speak a second time before we close the hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 315. And we're going to go into caucus for about the next 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll come back and exec on some bills. So we're going to come back into session, and the chair would accept a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Daniels. Is there a second? Second by Senator Rosenwald. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So on Senate Bill 312, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be ought to pass.
Senate Bill 312, relative to adjusted assessments of taxable property, moved out to pass by Daniels. Is there a second? Second by Rosenwald. Any discussion on this? Right, we talked about the date change. April 1 is an important date for the assessment people, right? So there's virtually no chance that this is going to get through the process. We just decided to leave it where it is with 60 days after passage to prevent creating any problems. You know, we had thought about going till April 1 of next year, but that won't help the communities do the job right? So I think 60 days after passage works. We'll leave the bill as it is without amendment. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent? Hennessy, second by Daniels. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, Senator D.
Who's taking that out?
I can take that out. I don't mind. Okay. All right, we're going to look to 315, Senate Bill 315, which we heard today. Is there a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ITL.
Senator Hennessy moves ITL. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Daniels. Discussion. Senator Hennessy?
Thank you. This bill looks to do something that we already do. Already, 100% of the rooms and meals taxes that we send back to our cities and towns goes to reduce property tax. And so I'm not quite sure what the point of this bill is, but I am concerned that this bill, if we were to pass this, would actually limit the amount of money that could reduce property taxes to 60% of rooms and meals. And so for that reason, I am opposing this bill.
Further discussion? Senator Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think that's not correct, Senator Hennessy. Not all of the money for rooms and meals goes to abate property taxes. Only 50% of the communities use it to affect the property tax. I checked that with LBA before I came here. And this would be additional money. The additional money, and as I said, this year would be $30 million. And this gives communities an option to use it to reduce property taxes. Now, property taxes are the big item. I think I've articulated that over and over again for a long period of time. This is an attempt to give communities an opportunity to use rooms and meals, their additional rooms and meals, to abate property taxes. So for that reason, I'm certainly not going to support your motion, and I'll speak against it on the floor. I think we have heard enough, or I have heard enough, I don't want to say we've, I've heard enough for the length of time that I've been here that property taxes need to be addressed. I tried to address it in the last budget by giving $20 million a year back to the communities in municipal aid, and at that time they could use it for whatever purposes they saw fit. And about 50% of them used it to abate property taxes. Now, there are other uses for rooms and meals money, and I assent to that. Manchester uses rooms and meals revenue to reduce the debt on the Verizon Center or the SNHU Center. So that's not reducing property taxes. With that, that's my concern, and that's why I will not support the inexpedient to legislate. But I appreciate the comments and appreciate the settlement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's important, from my perspective, that to recognize that I don't think the state belongs anywhere near the business of telling a town how to appropriate its revenues. The citizens do that, and they do a very effective job of that. If they wanted to use 100% of it, they could put a warrant article in that does that. It leaves it to the local population. I would also offer that in the 26 years I'm back in New Hampshire after leaving for 25 years to pursue another career, I've never heard anyone speak in favor of higher property taxes. Everyone I've ever heard of has spoken in favor of reducing them because that's the main taxation base for all of our municipal activities. So, I mean, again, yes, we hear about property taxes all the time, but they are a reality of the way of life in our state. Any further discussion? Senator Daniels.
Thank you. I think there are a couple things which would cause me to vote against this bill. The up to 60% was one that I had brought up, and while it's true that I agree with the senator from Manchester that we do often hear about high property taxes. As a selectman in my town for 19 years, we've heard that. But we try to encourage people to get out and vote because the majority of people's property taxes are determined locally. We have controlled those as a board. We didn't need the state to tell us to do it. You know, we would take, $500,000-600,000 out of our fund balance to keep it within the range that DRA would want us to keep our bond ratings good. But we can reduce property taxes by doing that. The other thing that I think it's a little bit subjective is that when you talk about going to reduce property taxes, that could mean many different things. It could be that based on the things that you're currently spending money on, or in the case of my town, we're looking at somewhere like a $10 million water sewer infrastructure mandate change from the EPA that's coming up. So we might take that money and put it toward there that would go to reduce taxes. So the question of what's reducing taxes, you could go and use it for a dog park. You may not have a dog park there at the time, but it would reduce taxes because now you don't have to take money and put it into a dog park. So just the subjectivity of it would cause me to also vote ITL on this.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of ITL signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Was that a no? Okay, so 3-2, ITL passes. Okay, all right, so 4-1. Okay, so who's going to take that out? Aaron, thank you. Senator Hennessy will take that out. Okay. Senate Bill 316. Senate Bill 316. Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 316 relative to Lucky 7 tickets, Lucky 7 licenses ought to pass, and I have a committee amendment for this bill.
All right, so we move it ought to pass as amendment. All right. Seconded by Senator Daniels, and we'll now hear the amendment.
Thank you. The bill is one page, so on page 1 of the bill, if you look at lines 27 and 28, and assuming that we may pass another bill that we'll soon discuss, I would propose that the amendment on line 28 strike out 12 p.m. and change that to 8 a.m., strike out 1 a.m. and change that to 4 a.m. So changing the hours that Lucky 7 tickets may be sold from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. the following day.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Daniels. A discussion. So this is to bring it in line with the other bill that we'll be discussing, so that there's no conflict there. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. If I look at this bill, I'm okay with the first part, which says you don't have to pay someone by check. But I'm concerned about the next two parts. There's I think it's gonna, we heard that there would be a deleterious effect on bingo. And because there's a very substantial bingo place in Nashua, I don't feel I can support it. We also heard that there might be a damaging effect on the Education Trust Fund. Also, the expansion of hours, I don't see the need for, so I'm not going to be able to vote for either the amendment or the bill.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Senator Rosenwald.
Please.
Senator Rosenwald, I did not hear, or I may have missed it, that there would be an effect on, a negative effect on the Education Trust Fund. Can you repeat where you heard that?
We heard that from Mr. McIntyre. He said possibly less money going into the Education Trust Fund because there would be less bingo.
Follow up?
Oh, please.
From what I heard from his testimony, he said that that would be anything from the Lucky 7 tickets would overcompensate for any lost bingo loss. Is that what the committee heard?
That's not what I heard.
Okay.
I think that was correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Further discussion? Yeah, I do recall Director McIntyre making that comment that we might lose some bingo revenues, but we'll make it up in Lucky 7. So, all right, without any further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the amendment to Senate Bill 316, which changes the hours, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed. So 3-2 on the amendment. All right, on the motion of ought to pass as amended, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
3-2. And who's going to take that out? Okay, Senator Hennessy will take that out. Okay, Senate Bill 317. Heard today, reducing the interest rate for abatements of paid property taxes. All right, Senator D'Alessandro moves out to pass, and Senator Daniels seconds that. Any discussion?
Did we need to make a change that was suggested simply with reference to the tax year? Was that one of the speakers made a suggestion? It wasn't necessarily with regard to the change in the date.
The date was fine. He wanted us to add for the 2022 tax year.
I think it makes it workable. If they felt that that particular provision was required, then I would suggest we draft a committee amendment to address that. That's what I heard, so.
I've got written down for the 20, shall take effect April 1st of 2022 for the 2022 property tax year. Would that be a suitable amendment for the committee? Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. I think we want to make sure it's not just for one tax year, so it's for taxable periods probably beginning with the 2022 tax year. If we just said for 2022, then it would be a one-year effect. So what I wrote down, and I don't think it's the typical OLS language, but what I think we heard was this act shall take effect April 1st, 2022, for the 22 tax year going forward, but that's not the way OLS writes things. They tend to say things like for taxable periods beginning with 2022.
Could we offer a committee amendment and let OLS work out the language on that? I think we all understand that we want it.
For that period
How about
going
if we just
forward.
said for the 2022 and subsequent years?
Senator Davis'
Idea's good?
suggestion is a good one.
All right.
Why don't we, because I've got the.
I'm not-
the tax year.
If you want.
I'm
I
not
can-
sure we can do that. I mean,
If you're okay, I think we can proceed, and I can just double check with Carolyn Lear from DRA that I get the correct language to OLS, and I'm happy to circulate it to you all via email before I report it to the clerk's office, if that's okay.
all right, so can we exec this with that proviso? That's my concern, is procedurally.
I think we have consensus on what the language should be. It's just a matter of getting a couple words correctly, so I think we can proceed.
Okay. The intent being for the 2022 tax year and all years going forward will allow DRA to develop that language. Is that consensus? All right.
Yeah.
OLS.
OLS, I'm sorry, yeah. All right, with that amendment, we'll need to OTPA on it. We're going to need not to pass his amendment motion. Go ahead.
I emailed Carolyn, and she just got back to me. I emailed Carolyn Lear, and she said the language should be for taxable periods beginning on or after April 1, 2022.
Beautiful.
You've got that, so we can, all right, for taxable periods beginning on or after April 1, 2022? All right, so, all right, do we have an OTPA out there yet? I need an ought to pass as amended motion first.
He's moving the amendment.
You're moving the amendment, okay? Is there a second? Second by Daniels. All right, any discussion on the amendment? Taxable periods beginning on or after April 1st of 2022. All right, hearing none? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? The ayes have it, and so we've adopted the amendment. And now we'll move, we'll accept an ought to pass as amended motion. By D'Alessandro, seconded by Daniels. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? The ayes have it. And so ought to pass, who wants to take that out?
I will.
Okay, Senator Rosenwald.
Move consent, or
Sure. Well, yeah, we can do that. Consent?
Second.
All right, Rosenwald moves consent, Daniel seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, consent. And who's going to take that out? Cindy, right?
yeah, I'll take it out.
All right, Senate Bill 318, FN, extending the hours in which games of chance may be conducted. Is there a motion? Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ought to pass.
Senator Hennessy moves ought to pass. Is there a second?
Second.
By Senator Daniels. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So 3-2. And who wants to take that out? Senator Hennessy, okay. Senate Bill 338.
Move inexpedient to legislate.
Senator Daniels moves ITL, second. Senator Hennessy seconds. Discussion. Senator Del Sandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a good idea. We have witnessed over the years, city after city around the country is doing this. I went to a conference in New York. It was on my hotel bill. I went to another state. It was on my hotel bill. It's a local option, and people are. We're building lots of hotels, particularly in the Portsmouth area, and this gives them an opportunity to put on a charge that makes sense. It's very small. She's talking about $2. That's nothing. What's the average cost of a hotel room today? It's in excess of $100. In this bill, if it's under 40, you don't have to assess the $2. It's a local option. I think it's very reasonable. It's very appropriate. The mayor of Portsmouth strongly in favor of it, and I think their building of new hotels is among the strongest in the state, maybe followed by Lebanon, which indeed is adding more and more hotels. So in Manchester, we've added 2 or 3, and we're trying to encourage more businesses to come, and I don't think this would be a detriment in any way, and it would be up to the locals to decide whether to bring it forward. To me, it makes a great deal of sense. It's a nominal fee, and as I said, it just makes sense to me. Thank you,
Further
Mr.
discussion.
Chairman.
Senator Daniels.
Thank you. In this last budget, we put a lot of money in to tourism. I mean, I think we pretty much maxed out what we put in there in hopes that we were going to bring tourists to the state to help out the economy. When cities, towns build hotels and things like that, they're collecting that extra money. We also made changes to room and meals tax. So those tourists that are coming in are collecting additional money through the room and meals tax that is going back as well. So there is money that's coming in. We didn't hear about any of the money that is being generated as a result of the things that we did this time. But yet, certainly the revenues have shown that it's paying off. My concern on this is that at a time that we're trying to bring in tourism, because we recognize that pretty much is our bread and butter in New Hampshire, to start taxing the same people that we're trying to get into state, I think fights back against that. And while, it's been brought up a couple times that this is only $2, a number of years back here, when we had our cigarette tax at 23 cents, by moving it from 21 cents, moving it from 21 cents to 25 cents, the state lost $3 million in revenue, which you could see when you looked at Maine, Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont. So a little bit can go a long way, and I don't think that we should be taking any action that starts to kill our economy or puts any kind of negative connotation on it. I think we ought to welcome the tourists in. They will spend their money in various ways once they get here, which should help to make up some of the revenue that is necessary for the towns and the cities. Thank you.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there were a lot of components of this bill that needed work. The 24-hour thing, the expectation, I believe, that some towns may not have a means to collect a $2 fee and may look to the DRA to collect that for them when the 8% rooms and meals tax is submitted. However, in discussions with the DRA, they don't actually collect data right now on where that rooms and meals tax was earned. It's if you own multiple establishments, you can submit your taxes to the state, but it's not by zip code. So what I would recommend to the supporters of this bill is to incorporate looking at a $2 fee into another bill that this committee will hear, which just happens to be my bill, SB 343, which looks at establishing a committee to study the formula for distribution of room occupancy tax revenues. So if cities like Portsmouth or Lebanon are looking for additional tax monies to support the number of visitors that they get or the number of day visitors that they get, perhaps that this would be an avenue for them to support. So I will be voting against this, but I encourage the supporters of this bill to look at SB 343. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of ITL on Senate Bill 338, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
4 to 1. And who wants to take that out? Senator Daniels. All right, that concludes our work for today. Without any other further business to come before the committee, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by D'Alessandro.
I move out of executive session.
Thank you. So moved by Hennessy, seconded by D'Alessandro. We come out of executive. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moved to adjourn by Daniels, seconded by D'Alessandro. All in favor, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.